and fertigation. You have something like 10 minutes. Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, I wanted to thank Fertinova team for having given me the opportunity to talk today here, and also for having invited me to be part of the external advisory committee for this project. I wanted to start my talk asking you one question. What are we doing here this morning? Why have we taken a plane or the train or a car and are all here? And as it happened when we were little, I think that we have to look at the whiteboard and see what the answer for the question is. On the whiteboard or here on this panel, it says that we came here to share good practices for fertigation in Europe. I think there is something very important. That objective, the reason why we're here, is very important. But there is something which has been done very well in Fertinova. Because there's been universities put together, also people from the field of research, the knowledge, researchers. But to look for these solutions and these good practices, they counted on users as well. They counted on irrigators themselves. Surveys were carried out also. We talked about practical cases and field studies, and here we have irrigators and users who are in close contact with this fertigation. So the solutions, these studies, they're not on theoretical problems. These are solutions for real problems, because that previous field work's been done with all the users. Here we have the president of the Central Union of Irrigators, Enrique Fon. He's been in Mijares for 40 years dealing with fertigation and trying to move forward with this issue. As a representative of users in general, I wanted to tell you that Spanish irrigators and European ones as well, we are very much committed with agricultural good practices. So we are in favor of fertigation. I say this not as a theoretical idea, but I will show you some practical examples. We're all committed to fertigation and good agricultural practices, and we will see that in a minute.
Me han pedido que hable un poco de las relaciones entre
I was told to talk a little bit about the relationship between the administration and irrigators and the irrigating community in Spain. Our main objective, we have a National Federation of Irrigating Communities, FENACORE, which was funded in the year 55. But our objective is to cooperate with the administration chosen by the Spanish people from a political independence. These irrigating communities, even if there's a lot of there are politics in relation to water, all the members of an irrigating community are the property owners of the plots in this area. So it is not a voluntary association, whether as ones or others. No, we are corporations which have nothing to do with these politics. And that is our relationship with the administration. Loyal cooperation, but of course defending the interest of the sector. For this loyal cooperation, we have the federation I mentioned before, with more than 2 million hectares, which are part of this federation, and we coordinate with the administration. We have also organized ourselves at an European level with the Euro-Mediterranean Irrigators Community, where we incorporate European countries and North African countries to share experiences and work together. We have also recently established set up. Well, here I have the objectives, but I will skip it through because we all know about it. We set up a new lobby for irrigation, Irrigants d'Europe, to work with the European Union for specific issues, and we have irrigators from Portugal, France, Italy and Spain. Well, I'm going to move on to an important topic, because, also Lou Peters here, who works in Brussels. Modernization of the irrigation, does it save water or not? Because a debate's been opened up in the last few years. According to this study by ADENA, modernization of irrigation has been a bad business for nature and society in general. Well, I think that this work, which has been presented to the European Union as well, I have good friends in the environmental field and ecologist associations, and I respect it deeply. But this work, was done a little bit following this environmental awareness, which is something like religion, in which before having data and all the information, conclusions have been reached. They talk about 8 cases of irrigating modernization, and they reach a conclusion. I'm going to go fast through it. None of the analyzed project has effectively saved water. Even more, there's been an increase in the consumption of this resource in 4% and 42% in Alto Aragón, with reference to the previous levels. Can you say that in a project without having taken into account consumption data, previous or the after data, which are actually available? Can you bring this study to Europe to say that this is a bad business for the university? People at the University of Zaragoza who carried out this study, they didn't set foot in those irrigating communities. They haven't consulted or asked irrigators. They had the data, but they didn't go to see them. We don't know where they took them from. We ask for explanations, but they cannot give them to us. They're apologizing somehow for the big mistakes they've made. So we felt obliged to prepare this other study where we say that modernization of irrigation is a very good business for society and nature. We don't want to, be somehow fundamentalists on irrigation, because the conclusions are modernization of irrigation actually saves water in general terms, and it allows to do what we're asking in the new water policy. A few years ago, from the environmental sector, we were asked not to create an offer policy of building dams and more hydraulic infrastructure, and they wanted us to do demand management policy. Well, current uses, we are doing that with the concept of modernization, the modernization that we're counting on nowadays, and that is modernized methods. It is true that it's also being created the idea that when you modernize an irrigating area, it is to widen it at the end of the day. But sometimes it could be like that, but that's not always the case. I know hundreds of irrigated areas that has been modernized and they haven't widened the surface. They cannot take any more a hectare up. Some cases have taken place, yes, but we should study case by case, and we should look at the data, get the information, but we shouldn't have these preconceptions. We're going to study case by case, because it is true that sometimes, some irrigated area, they saved water, they had more resources, so they widened the irrigated area, and we understand that all of that has to be done according to regulations, etc. But we cannot take one specific case and bring it up at the level of, to the level of a norm. So, our conclusions, we carried out a study of the mistakes made in Adena's report, and we reached these conclusions, which I think are important. How can you say that we do not save water if in 20 years in Spain, with the support of the ministry, autonomous communities, irrigators, we've gone from 2 million gravity hectares to less than 1 million? How are we not going to save water if nowadays in Spain there are nearly 2 million of localized irrigation, 51%, and 880,000, 24% of sprinklers irrigation? At this time, 75% of irrigation in Spain is being done through an efficient and modern system with pipes. So expenses, the reduction of expenses go to irrigators according to the cubic meters, or with the binomic fee. So this old vision wouldn't correspond to the reality of irrigation in Spain in the year 2018. That is our reality nowadays. An efficient irrigation, apart from Israel, we are the country in the world with the widest amount of localized irrigation. Israel has not a lot of surface, and as you know, the situation with water is quite different. Here you have the consumption data. You can see how they were decreasing throughout the year, up to 15,000 cubic hectometers a year. I'm going to talk about a precise example of modernization where we're going to see how much water was saved. And that is the case of Acequia Real del Júcar. This is in Valencia. It's a medieval irrigation area founded by Jaime I. He was irrigating with an open channel of 11 meters wide, and 4 meters high. I worked there as a general secretary. There are 25,000 irrigators. We have modernized the area. We went from closed pipes, for drip irrigation, and we went from 392 cubic hectometers to 214. Also in Spain, they're stating that modernization hasn't saved water because the concession revision didn't take place. I don't know who can say that. If you go to Hydrographic Confederation, one thing is reality. If you modernize your irrigation, you irrigate more efficiently, and then from then on there is irrigation of the same surface with less water. Something quite different is that the Confederation, maybe they just opened the administrative report to modify the cubic hectometers, etc., etc. But here the concessional revision was made. After 10 years we finished the report. We went from 392 to 214 after 10 years. Because, the whole of the concessional world is quite complex. This is long and tedious, but that doesn't mean that we've been irrigating with the 392 hectometers. From the first year, we went to 214. So we cannot say that we haven't saved water because the concession has not been revised. Because one thing would be the management of the water, the daily management, and administrative documentation is something different. That is a very common mistake. Saving fertilizers. We have here an engineer of Acequia Real del Júcar. She's responsible for modernization issues, but these water savings, that has meant that irrigators can fertilize individually their plots with gravity irrigation. They spread superficial fertilizers and they irrigate later on, so that this is effective, and they went from there to drip irrigation fertigation, where dosage is being done 240 days a year with minimum dosage and great efficiency. The result is that they're using 35% less fertilizers compared to the doses of with gravity irrigation. This has been compared, and all data are transparent for all community irrigators and for the general public. What does that mean? We have saved in fertilizers in more than 35%, and also its application is much more efficient. What's also important when it comes to fertilizers? Well, the saving of energy. Why? Because we went from irrigation through a channel, here by gravity, to taking the water from a pool which is 40 meters over the intake. So instead of using pipes by gravity, we use channels, and the energy is being given to us by nature. So one of the problems of modernization was an increase in energy, because for drip irrigation or sprinkler irrigation you need to use pressure, and you normally do it through energetic consumption. But here, in the difference in heights, the difference in height was used to take advantage of it. That is a water saving. We've seen that 178 cubic meters a year. We saved the fertilizers, we saved energy, and we saved in herbicides as well. Why? Because this drip irrigation, instead of making the whole of the surface wet, you only do it with the surface which is underneath the tree. So there's less herb, and when there are trees that they offer their shade, herbicide do not grow underneath that shade. So that's another important benefit. But even more, the commitment of this irrigating community with sustainability has led us to do something with that water which has been saved, which has been sent to the lake of the Natural Park of Albufera. So I think that in order to talk about the modernization of irrigation and its effects in general, and this is a quite evident example, that is completely sustainable. It is a big business for society, it's a good business for users who modernize and adapt to the 21st century, and it's something which is very positive. There are isolated cases of the contrary, where modernization has led to an increase in production in the same surface. Well, yes, because sometimes you have to pay for modernization, and you do 2 crops a year, or you have the opportunity to move on to a different kind of crop, etc. But if you increase the food production with the same intake, the same use of water, you're benefiting society. In some places the surface has been widened, and that should of course be done complying with all the regulations. But in general, irrigation modernization, and I gave you a very practical example on when water could be saved. If we hadn't modernized this in the last drought, we would have had very severe restrictions for the whole of the area. But we had been, for 6-8 years, we had been filling the water reserves because of the cubic hectometers that we were not consuming every year. So we could actually fight this drought. What is our challenge? And I throw this challenge to Fertinova and future projects as well, to make it compatible drip irrigation with fertigation, with organic and ecological agriculture. Here I offer some solutions because it is true that in these areas where there are very small plots, it is very comfortable to have the community of irrigators to be in charge of fertigation and applying fertilizers, etc. You save costs because it's a wide volume of fertilizers, and agriculture is quite feasible, which is like part-time agriculture. But how can you make that compatible with ecological or organic agriculture, which is very scarce nowadays, less than 1%? Well, maybe we have to offer opportunities to the growers in these communities who want to go take that path. Here I show you some solutions to make both things compatible, separated networks, compatible fertigation, etc. So, modernization is a good business for society and for nature. We save water, we save fertilizers with fertigation, and we are willing to take steps forward in this policy which is beneficial for the whole of society. And with that, we count on the cooperation of all of you and the administration.